Welcome to the Real G with your illustrious host, Doug here. And we're the real deal is all about unpacking successful models so that we can light the way. So all of our guests will be people who have overcome obstacles, who've created amazing things. And today is no exception. Our good friend Jeron Kelley, who is not only a prolific attorney, he also is a real estate investor. So we're going to get the real deal on balancing having a profession and a secondary profession of investing, because they're both incredible businesses and they have different hats. So let's dive in, Jeron. We met at David Dweck's Brick. David's been a guest on the show, will be again, and the Book Estate
Absolutely.
Real Estate Investment Club. But
Yep.
share all that is Jeron.
Okay, let's do it. Um, well, I could give you the 10-hour version, but we'll try to make it the maybe 3 to 5 minute version. And then we could take a deeper dive into some other fun things that aren't just solely about me, but about maybe my journey and
Hmm.
things I've run across over time. But yes, as you said, I wear a couple of hats. I mean, multiple hats, of course. I'm a husband and all the
Hmm.
other good hats, and I like to be charitable in the community. But the two hats that are important for this with overcoming challenges. One is I am a real estate attorney. We have a full service real estate practice here in Boca Raton that includes a variety of different sub practice areas: landlord tenant law and litigation, association law, title and closing work, um, uh, wills, trust, probate, and estate work, things like that. And then the other hat that I wear is my investor hat, that I do two different types of investing. One would be flipping. I do some flipping of properties here and there with partners. I'm pretty busy in my day job, so I always like to do it with a partner.
Hmm.
I don't always have the time to be able to pop up to, Lake Worth or West Palm or out west in Delray or wherever the house is that we're flipping, to be able to check on workers every day and kind of manage the day-to-day aspects of a flip. But certainly, if I'm able to use my skills to identify flips and identify properties that need help, need work, and that have a good exit value, that's great. That's one of the value that I bring. Of course, I do have some money for funding the flips, so I'm able to bring that to the table as well. And then normally I'll find a partner that does have the time to actually go and manage a crew. The second part of my investing hat is I buy multifamily investing here, sort of workforce housing throughout Palm Beach County and a little bit in Broward too. I've got 37 units my wife and I have put together over time, buying some more now. In fact, looking at a property tomorrow, quadplex. Actually, I lie. Sorry, on Friday, a quadplex in Lake Worth. And yeah, so just looking to keep picking up properties, and that's sort of the long-term goal of financial freedom, and building wealth through real estate ownership. And so yeah,
Love it.
that's kind of the high level overview there.
So what chicken or the egg? Did you get into real estate law because you were already investing, or did you get into investing because of the law you were practicing and you're saying, "Hey, I could do this"?
Great question. Yeah, really good question. So, without getting too deep into my psyche or too Freudian or whatever it is, but I did grow up sort of in the business. My parents
Okay.
were investors themselves.
In Florida?
My dad worked in Florida. I was born
Yep.
and raised here in West Palm. Dad worked for Florida Power and Light for like 20 years. My mom was a homemaker. But even when they were new in their marriage, and even actually before I was born, my two older sisters, they were buying and building and keeping some as well, multifamily. They would buy and build duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes throughout Palm Beach County. And they built up a nice little portfolio, especially for two people that at that time were not college educated, and but they were smart people. They just
Hmm.
didn't have all the degrees behind their names. But I grew up in that business even when I was younger. It's kind of a longer story, but my dad later started a small construction company, did well in the 80s, and then hit bad times, hard times around 1990. There was a recession, 1991 really, and lost his construction company. But he still had some of those multifamily properties to fall back on,
Hmm.
and that helped support us as a family, and helped my parents helped support me to get through college and through law school. And a lot of that was due to them having some of these properties that allowed them to have cash flow, but also to build wealth and have a retirement that they had. That my father since passed 20 plus years ago, but my mother still has some decent retirement because of that and what they did there. So the safety and security of real estate was wonderful. I saw that it could help you grow and can help you um, have that financial freedom that I think all of us want. And there's a number of ways that it does that. I'd say at least four different ways, especially the buy and hold method allows you to experience. So let's say you buy let's say a quadplex, or even a single family home. It could work for anything. It could be a 20 units, whatever it may be. But let's say you buy I don't know, a $500,000 duplex, let's say. And over time, let's say if you fast forward 5 years, maybe the $500,000 duplex will have appreciation. Maybe then it'll be worth 600,000 in 5 years. So you get appreciation. The second thing that you get is you get the mortgage pay down. So every month you're paying down a mortgage, and so you're paying principal to that mortgage. So over time, the mortgage that you have, maybe you took a $400,000 mortgage out on a $500,000 property. In 5 years, that mortgage might have the principal left on it might only be 360,000, let's say, hypothetically. So you paid down that mortgage 40,000. Really, it's not even you, but the tenants have paid down that
Right.
mortgage. The third thing, of course, is the obvious thing is cash flow. So hopefully you're buying properties that have at least some kind of cash flow, meaning the rents that the tenants bring in minus all the expenses, including your mortgage, your taxes, property taxes, your insurance, your maintenance, things like that. Hopefully at the end of the month or at the end of the year, you have some money left over, and that's your cash flow that you're putting in your pocket to reward you for owning that property for that period of time. And then the fourth thing, which people overlook, really there's five things, and I'll get to the bonus fifth one, but the fourth one that's important that a lot of people overlook is the depreciation. So tax depreciation. You know the engineer tax services very well.
Hmm.
You know the process, but for those that don't, I've many of the properties that I've purchased, I've been able to accelerate the depreciation, pull money back out of the property to put that money back in my pocket so I can invest in more properties. But let's say you didn't even do that, the cost segregation and the accelerated depreciation. Even if you didn't, you would take out the value of the land. So let's say that $500,000 property, let's say the land is 100,000. There's, let's say, $400,000 that the building depreciates over 27 and a half years. So you can help to write off a good portion of your income every year in your taxes due to just basic depreciation. Again, kind of fast forward, or what I said, I kind of got ahead of myself, that you can accelerate that depreciation and do a cost segregation study and bring even more of that money more quickly back into your pocket, so that you can reinvest that money in something that's making you money. So that's awesome. And then there's kind of the fifth thing that people really should be taking into account right now, but they really generally don't, and don't think of this, which is the effect of inflation right now. Inflation, not just on the appreciation of properties. We've seen a crazy appreciation from 2020 to 2022, maybe early 2023. We saw that within the housing market, but multifamily, almost everything except for maybe office.
Right.
Office is the one kind of class that's had some issues. South Florida office has been pretty good, but other parts of the country not so good. But the point also, though, with inflation is that, let's say inflation is about 7% a year. I know they say the official Fed CPI says it's whatever 3.9 or 4.0 or whatever it is. I
However
don't
they
I don't
spin
really
it.
believe that
Yeah.
number. I don't think you do too. And most people who really go to the grocery store, at least once or twice a month, don't believe that either. You could just see how crazy prices have gotten. So it's really not 3 or 4%, but let's say even it's 7%. I believe it's probably even a little higher than that. But let's say it's 7% annually, and let's say you have that $400,000 mortgage. Well, every year that $400,000 mortgage, the value of it is essentially diminishing by sorry, I'm just having a little issue here with my teams. There we go. Apologize. But diminishing the purchasing the value of the mortgage and the money that it takes to pay back that mortgage is diminishing by, let's say, 7% a year for that period of time that inflation is that high. I don't see inflation dropping anytime soon because we're spending too much money
Yep.
in deficits, $4 or $5 trillion a year, and deficit spending. I don't think, again, not getting political in any way, but I don't think either party has really said that they're trying to crack down on the deficit spending. So, until that happens, we're going to continue to have strong inflation, and I don't think our rates are coming down anytime soon. And so, let's say 5 years from now, that $400,000 mortgage, even if you didn't pay $1 towards principal, the amount of money that would take to pay it back, yes, is technically 400,000, but 5 years from now, 400,000 is not the same 400,000 it is today. It's
Right.
much easier to make $400,000 5 years from now than it would be today. Just like if you went back to 1990, let's say, to make $400,000 was a lot. It was very hard, a lot of money. 400,000 was you could buy a very, very, very nice house for $400,000, which might be today, might be a $1.5 million house. So those are kind of the things that I think about when I'm investing, and the 5 factors that really drive me to keep buying properties, and because I really just see it as a long-term benefit. So
100%. And you're still buying in South Florida. You're not spooked by some of the other issues that many people address, is essentially insurance and taxes as they go up.
yeah.
The numbers. Have you found that you've modified your criteria, or are you just finding less opportunities simply because of the math's got to math? We got to. Do you follow the 1% rule?
Sort of, yeah, yes. Just generally, that's the first number I do, the 1% rule, just to kind of identify and see if a
Yeah.
property is even within the range of purchase. Like, is this something that I even want to take another 30 minutes to actually do a deeper dive into the numbers? So yes, look at the
So
1%.
for anyone who is unaware what the 1% rule is, would you like to share from your perspective how you utilize what that means, and how someone, if they're just doing, because it's a great barometer. So, oh, okay,
Sure,
cool. I could spend more time
sure.
on this or
So
not.
let's say it's what you do is you take the rents per month, and so let's say it's I don't know, I'm trying to use easy numbers here, but let's say it's $900 in rent per month. You're going to have about $10,000 in total annual rent. So I would be looking to have not pay more than $100,000 for that property, give or take. That's about
Right.
1% of the total purchase price is your income. So you do the 10,000 divided by 100,000, and sorry, the 10,000 divided by
So
100,000.
100,000 divided by one, the 1% of it would be 10,000.
Yes, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, I need a
Yeah.
calculator here.
Yeah.
I'm putting me on the spot, but yes,
Sorry.
I,
Yeah.
I generally try to line up the rents with the purchase price of the property, and as long as they're pretty close to that kind of 1% rule, then I'm good. So,
Right.
but yes, so that's kind of what we look at here. I tend to stay in the you know let's say 6 units, or really even the 4 units and under. I like the 4 units and under because you can get 30-year fixed financing. Rates certainly are much higher than they were before, but I've got many of my properties are 3.5%, 4%, 4.25%, kind of
Amazing.
in that range. Certainly buying properties nowadays, you're looking in the sevens, most likely, maybe even depending on your credit score or the situation, maybe low eights. But I do see that insurance prices are just starting the slow grind down. We certainly hope. I'm hearing that from my insurance agent, and we're seeing more carriers come into the market. And I just hope we don't have a storm this summer. If we don't have a storm that hits Florida, I think we're going to be in really good shape for late 24 and early 25. So I think we're going to have insurance prices come back to much more reasonable levels here, and have a much more stabilized insurance market. But the other reason why I like kind of smaller unit sizes, 4, 5, 6 units, even maybe a triplex in a good area, is the insurance side. You can get into Citizens. So as long as you can get into Citizens, Citizens is certainly higher than it was a few years ago. Everything's gone up, but it's not crazy numbers that we're seeing from some of those private carriers that were still in Florida, the very few that were in 2023 and 2024. So that's kind of my buy box.
So interesting. So many people who, when they say multifamily, oftentimes their goal is 10 units, 20 units, 100, then and up.
They think
Um,
the bigger the amount of units, the better. That's kind of like a mindset.
well,
There is,
but
mhm,
is it
go.
also for some, my experience has been, because full disclosure, I've been a single family guy. That's just been, and
Me
I want
too.
to move into it, but that's what's worked for me.
Love it.
The the idea behind people going for 5 units or more was the opposite of what you shared. They want the commercial lending as opposed to the residential. Uh, have you ever done a commercial, and what is the difference? Obviously, your
Probably
comfort zone
commercial.
is,
Yeah, I have two sixplexes, for example, that are both commercial loans. The problem is that it resets about every 5 years. You might have some
oh, okay.
commercial that's about every 7 years. But that's what's the scary part right now that people are talking about. People got into big apartment complexes, or especially in office products or some other types of commercial, and their financing, they might have gotten into it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and their financing is coming due in the next 12 months. And we've already
Oh,
seen
no,
some
the
early
rate increase.
foreclosures.
Yeah,
And when you have, rate increases from, 4 and 5% to, 8 and 9%,
it's
you
not
might have
sustainable.
problems, or maybe even
Yeah.
3%. And they were doing their pro formas, their numbers on what they expected to be making on these properties based on that, 3 and 4% rate, 4 years ago. And that's not, that's not the universe that we live in, and nor is it coming back to that number anytime
You know,
soon, in my opinion.
And I think it's a great distinction, and one that I don't think is talked about enough is
Mhm.
that consideration.
Yep.
And what'll be interesting, I think, for us, and so if we're putting a timestamp on this, we're in early or mid 2024, May of 2024,
Mhm. Yep.
is what will happen to that quad, triplex, quad, like, will that market start bouncing up more because people who are used to multis may go, oh, these aren't making sense. The numbers just don't add up. Do you think there's going to be uh, a boon in the smaller multi market?
I don't know necessarily that it will, people from the large, large unit mixed deals, 40 units and 80 units are just suddenly going to come rushing into the smaller units. I think most people that are playing in that sort of atmosphere, so to speak, they know the differences between the product types. And let me say this, I want to give the flip side of what I'm talking about here, is that the advantage of working on bigger properties is really twofold. One is you have, you're able to have, bring your costs down for certain things. Like, for example, mowing my lawn on my properties. If I've got, let's say, hypothetically 10 properties that are 10 triplexes, quadplexes, sixplexes, I'm going to have to pay, I don't know, $150 per lawn times 10, that's $1,500 a month. Whereas if I had one decent sized complex, I might only pay $300 for that lawn, as opposed to $1,500. Or a
Hmm.
new roof, I might have to do 10 new roofs over a period of 20 years, whereas they only have to do one roof on that same size unit mix of, let's say, 140 unit complex. Yeah, the one roof is going to be more expensive than any one or two of my roofs, but it's not going to be the same expense as 10 roofs, 10
Right.
separate, roofs for 10 separate quadplexes, let's say. So those are the things. Plus, management and handyman, you might be able to have a full-time handyman when you start to get to the 50, 60 unit level. That saves you a lot of money on repainting things or getting units rent ready. So there are advantages from a cost scope.
Hmm.
And then the second thing is just leveraging based on the size of the portfolio. I guess there possibly could be some advantages on that, but I don't know that that's necessarily any different than, let's say, 10 4-unit properties versus 140. Someone would have to do the math on that and
Right.
prove it to me, but definitely the costs. Yeah, there are advantages in that respect, but United States is one of the very few countries in the world that has fixed 30-year mortgages for 4 units and under. Even Canada, I think they have 7 years. If I recall, I've read up a little bit on that before. So even our neighbor to the north, that's just like America, but they don't have 30-year mortgages. Every
Right.
seven
And
years it resets as well. So there are advantages to locking in those 30-year rates if you think you're in an inflationary environment that's not coming down anytime soon. And remember another thing too is, let's say you got into, let's say, a quadplex at a 7.5% rate right now. You may say, well, I don't know if in 3 years it's going to be 7.5 or higher. If it is 7.5 or higher, then you're winning the game. You're in a good place with your fixed mortgage. But if it drops and then it's at 5.5%, the good news is you can
it's
refinance at any
refi.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So and refinance it to another 30-year mortgage at 5.5%. So
Right.
that's I truly believe that the game there's if I had to summarize what I'm saying here, is the investing game at its core is twofold. One is playing in a inflationary environment, which is a debt destruction environment. So they're destroying the dollar. The federal government is printing trillions of dollars. That's destroying the value of the dollar. So how do I take advantage of them destroying the value of the dollar? I'm getting hurt at the grocery store. I'm getting hurt at the gas pump. I'm getting hurt, but I can flip the script on the government and I can say, well, I'm going to take advantage of your destruction of the dollar by taking out a lot of fixed rate debt and bring me fixed rate debt. Keep bringing it, so that the value of that debt gets destroyed over time. So that's the first part of the game. The second part of the game is the tax avoidance game, legal tax
Of
avoidance,
course.
which is back to that cost segregation we talked about, accelerated depreciation. That's really a great way to keep investing money and keep a good portion of the money that you've invested in the property coming back to you pretty quickly, to keep rolling that into more properties and more fixed rate debt. That's the summary of my thesis, and so far it's worked. We'll see. But yeah,
Well, past performance predicts future results, and at
might.
yeah,
Yeah,
when you're surrounding yourself with the smart people, obviously, Julio and ETS has been tremendous in the
yep.
cost seg mindset and beyond. There's so many other like next level strategies that we can be utilizing as we build it. Now, two questions regarding this. One, do you manage your properties yourself?
Great question. So when I was at 10 units, I had a few buildings and had a fourplex, the triplex, and then I had 3 condos. I did self-manage up until that point, and then I got stopped and I stopped buying for a few years. And I finally had to like really be introspective and wonder why that I stopped buying. I was buying very quickly for a few short years and then I stopped. And why am I stopped? And I realized that I got tired of even the periodic phone call about my toilets backed up, or my whatever, my power got shorted out, or the septic tank is overflowing coming up into my tub. So those aren't fun on Saturday, or on any day, but Saturday when you're at the bar at 7 o'clock with your friends having your first bourbon, it's not a great thing, or whenever it is, or at midnight. So decided to go ahead and get a property manager, and he's very reasonable. I work with a number of property managers in my legal business, but this one that I use on my investment side, very reasonable. He charges $100 per door per month. Yeah, he does a good job for me, and I'm happy. And then from there, as soon as I did that, I was able to scale up almost immediately, and then bought another 27 units in just a short, maybe like 2 year time frame, 2.5 years. So, yeah, that's what I do, and I recommend that someone who's just getting into the game, they're buying their first house, let's say that's an investment property, or their first duplex or whatever it is, self-manage for a little while. Self-manage until you find that it's getting in the way of the time that you have, because the next thing we didn't really talk about is, let's go back to the other hat here that we didn't spend much time with, which is the law firm. It took me, I'm 14 years into having a law firm, and really 22 years into being a lawyer. It took time to build the law firm up to be what it is today. We have 5 attorneys, 22 paralegals. There are a lot of challenges on the way, that along the way that we had to overcome. A lot of stops and starts, a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. In any business, it's
So
like
you started
that.
out, you were just solo. You were a
I was
solo
just for a
office.
very short period of time, and then I brought on my partner Conrad, who he graduated law school right after I started the firm, and
Are you complimentary, or do you both do the
mhm.
same?
Very complimentary, personality wise and skill wise. I'm a little more of the um, uh, I guess you would say, extrovert. I certainly enjoy speaking to people, doing things like this. It's great. Conrad is a very funny guy, and he's great with people too, but he just doesn't prefer that. He's a little more about operations and
Hmm.
executing on tasks and being a little behind the scenes, very detail oriented. I'm less so. I'm more big picture,
Hmm.
visionary. That's kind of my skill set. So those work together very well. We very rarely step on each other's toes, and our partnership has been great. So that's another little lesson learned, is make sure you're really picking a good partner. It's hard to tell sometimes, but I do think that finding someone that complements you rather than mirrors you is the way to go. Because if you two are mirroring each other, then who's going to fill in your gaps?
Right.
Then you're going to need a third partner to fill in those gaps or something, or hire
Hire
staff
someone.
to do that. Yeah, that's very loyal. Who will do those things. But so my point of bringing this up, though, is that it took really the better part of the 14 years. Obviously different mile markers along the way. We had different levels of success, but because of the business and the hard work that we put into that, we were able to bring cash flow into the investing area
Hmm.
of the other hat that I wear. So the one hat complements the other hat. Without it, because there's the challenge, people will say, "Hey, I'm 25. I just started. I got out of college and I'm working my entry level job. I'm making 50,000 a year, and I want. How do I own 37 units?" Or you can one day, but you're 25. I'm 47, so it takes time, and you've got to build your portfolio over time. But the first thing you need to do is be bringing in cash flow, and so build up your career, build up your business, learn a set of skills, maybe start your own business, go out on your own, build that up, and then in time, if it takes you 7 years or 10 years, then go out once you start having a good amount of cash flow and invest in real estate and assets that can pay you back money, whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so, to follow the question I was going to ask about the property, and then I was going to tie into the attorney work, the lawyer work, is, have you do you have a strategy to pay down all of those properties, or are you just running the 30 year?
Great
What's the
question.
the goal for that?
Great question. We'll see what the interest rate environment does. I don't know where we'll be in 5 years or 10 or 15 years. I don't know what our government's going to change. If they're going to balance a budget in 5 years, then great. It's not great for my debt destruction plan per se, but that's great. Then that just means that rates are likely going to come back down significantly. And then the upside of that is you can go out and buy properties at much lower rates, and
Hmm.
you're going to start to see asset prices increase more significantly, even though you're not having the type of inflationary debt destruction, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So you just got to pick. There's different advantages depending on the scenario here. But one of the things that I've also learned about having properties, which is fantastic. And it's the goes to the second part of the game that I play. One is the debt destruction with inflation. The second part of that is the tax avoidance. The best way to if you need income or need some type of money for something, let's say you're going to treat yourself to a nice purchase of a $200,000 RV because you're 55 years old and you want to go around the country, or a $500,000 RV, probably you
Yeah.
would need to have something decent. So let's say $500,000 RV, you want to go travel the country because you've got some amount of financial freedom, and you can take a couple months off from your business and you can let your management handle it and check in, once a day on email. Great, awesome. Should you go and distribute a bunch of money from your company to yourself? Probably not, because you're going to be taxed at a significant rate. What's a better way to do that? Well, let's say you have 37 units, or you've got 10 unit complex, or you've got a few homes, and they don't have to be fully paid off, but let's say you have a $500,000 in equity in one of them or in several of them. You can combine them, go and do a cash out refinance. The government doesn't tax you on the money that you pull out, and in fact, you're getting tax benefits to having on the interest. You're taking it is the interest amounts that you're paying for are lowering your taxes and your tax burden, and you're getting free money pulled back out of those properties. So that's one of the great advantages of real estate, is you can do things like that. And you're also having, every year that these properties appreciate, they're appreciating tax-free, meaning,
At the
let's
moment.
say, well, right, at the moment, you're right. Yeah. Well, again, I don't want to get too
Yeah.
political, but let's just say that there was some people in Congress that were trying to float a plan that would require you to pay taxes on gains that you
Unrealized
made,
gains. Yeah.
unrealized gains, exactly. But so let's say it's $400,000 today, and 5 years from now that property is worth $500,000. Well, that $100,000 so far, because you've not sold the property, there's no tax on it. That's great. You have a hundred
But it's
thousand
not
dollars
really
sitting
income.
there.
You're not doing anything with it.
You're not doing anything with it, and you can do something with it by pulling money out with a cash
Right.
out refi. So these things are just vehicles. This real estate is vehicles to have, again, financial freedom and bury your money that's more or less tax free. And then if you want to sell something for whatever reason, let's say you get tired of having a property in Broward County. I don't know why, but let's say their taxes go up there on property taxes. Well, you can buy a property in Palm Beach in 1031, use a 1031 exchange to sell that $500,000 property and buy at least a $500,000 property or more here in Palm Beach County. Or let's say you want to get out of Hurricane Alley, and so you want to buy a property up in Western North Carolina, or your mountain home up there that you're going to Airbnb, so it's going to be an investment property, but you get to use a few months out of the year. Go do that. Do a 1031 exchange. So all of these things are tax avoidance, legal tax avoidance strategies. Yeah.
And so so I guess around financing, do you have those with DSCR loans, and are you paying them down? Because I know you're liking obviously you have the debt crusher. Do you have it on like biweekly, or what are your
Mhm.
strategies around that?
I
Because there's a
mostly
lot of
just have
savvy.
Yeah, mostly just have it monthly. There are one or two of the companies that allow like a biweekly kind of pay down. I think one of them I might have that, because there are some some pay down advantages to that, because you're paying a little less in interest every year. I think on maybe one of them I have an extra payment per year on the 52-week schedule,
Right.
that kind
Yeah,
of
that's what
thing.
happens.
But I, that's kind of like advantages at the margin, very small amounts that are advantageous. I like keeping capital liquid and ready to go to find new opportunities. So the short answer is no. My number one goal is not paying off mortgages so that I can have the least amount of mortgages as possible. I want to be liquid and ready to go for different opportunities. There are some other opportunities I've moved into. For example, over time, I have lent money on private lending and hard money
Hmm.
loans, they call it, depending on who you talk to. where I'm making 11 or 12% annually. Some of these loans are only 6 months. This program I just got into, invested some good money into, it's a 24-month program. It's a
Oh,
fund, and I'm getting 11% per year on it. So that's, I wanted to diversify just a little bit, and have some money in that. I've got another opportunity that's coming soon that I think is going to be really awesome, that might have a 25 to 30% plus IRR, annual IRR, that I'm excited about. So
wow.
trying to keep a little cash for
Is,
that.
is that real
Um,
estate related or?
it's not, it is life insurance,
Okay. Yeah.
buying life insurance policies. I wouldn't be the one to do it, but you invest in
Hmm.
a fund.
Yeah.
They buy them from people, let's say someone maybe who's 65 years old,
Hmm.
doesn't need the policy anymore for whatever reason. Maybe I won't even get into the reasons. Maybe they
Don't
just want
matter.
to,
Yeah.
they've got a $2 million policy and they'd like to get $400,000 for that policy, and they go buy that RV they've always
Hmm.
wanted and travel the country, or they've got stage 3 cancer and they want to enjoy the last 6 months of their life and they'd like the 400,000 to do that. Those are the things, and you can buy the policies, and then when the person passes, we're certainly not rooting for them to pass.
Well,
We don't
it's
really
going to
have any
happen.
interaction with them.
Yeah.
It's literally just holding, you're just holding policies and giving money to them. So there's kind of a benefit to both parties. But when they do pass, you get the face value of the
Hmm.
policy, and that people in a fund will buy these things together and profit together. So
Love it.
and people will say, yeah, it's a little morbid or a little dark, or I don't know if I'm
Companies are
have
doing it all
moral
the
qualms.
time. That's a
Well,
standard business model.
well, yeah, but it's also, again, it's providing liquidity to people who need it and want
Right.
it. They're not being
Yeah.
forced to sell their policies. You're creating a market for these things where they don't want it or need it anymore. Maybe they have one grown child, and the grown child is, maybe they're worth $50 million and they don't need their $1 million policy, or
Right.
maybe the opposite. Maybe they're on drugs and they haven't talked to them for 30 years, and they're like, why am I going to go leave my kid who's a drug addict, my adult child, $1 million policy? So whatever the reasons are, it's
Yeah.
not my problem, and it's not someone else's, but there is a market for this out there. And so the opportunities are rising for that. So yeah, always keeping my ears to the ground for different opportunities, but that's just sort of a side investment. I still always believe in real estate. I can't tell you how many of my clients that I've watched over the years, over the past 14 years, just make money hand over fist, and good for them. I'm really genuinely happy for them. Most of them put a lot of hard work and sweat into it, and really benefited and profited from their investments. And that goes back to even my dad used to tell me growing up that real estate is the way to true wealth. And
Hmm.
if you hobnob a little bit, not that I do it often, but if I am in a crowd with high net worth individuals, invariably you talk to people, and almost all of them have some type of real estate. I'm not talking about their personal home or their mansion. I'm talking about
Yep.
investments, whether it's commercial property or industrial or retail or whatever.
Oh, sorry, we stuck, froze a little bit.
Got a little frozen.
Yeah. Well, 100%. Where I lost you is you were sharing about high net worth individuals. Almost every one of them has real estate as usually a very sizable bit of
Yes.
their thing. So you'll see really successful people like yourself, like you're a very successful attorney, yet when you're done, your real estate is going to continue making you money. Whereas when you're done practicing, unless you sell it and you've got some equity in that, and you're getting some passive income from it, you're not making money off of the the work someone else does, unless of course it's your firm. But with the real estate, it's passive income. And that was kind of what I was getting at as far as your legacy plan right now. Still young, still aggressive, still doing your thing, and you're still working, still making money. The great thing about having real estate as your legacy is you have 30, 40, 50 doors and they're free and clear, now you're getting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 bucks a month per door. Next thing you know, you're making more money than you were as an attorney just from the passive returns from the real estate, which is huge. Let's dive in a little bit to maybe some of the challenges. What's a challenge you had, whether it be in real estate or starting your business, that maybe even push you to the point of questioning doing it at all? Was there ever that element of
Hmm.
challenge, or was there just some experience that you had, you was like a moment where you said, you know what, this was a breakthrough for me, this was something that I thought was not going to work out and I did work out, or I feared that it wasn't going to work out and still pushed through? What was an
Yeah.
experience like that?
Yeah, there's always fear. That mostly came in the very beginning. I tried some different marketing methods when I first put my shingle up in 2010, and that's right in the middle of a distressed real estate market. It was tons of foreclosures, and we started off doing foreclosure defense and short sales and bankruptcies and loan mods, and that was really kind of the main thing that was out there at the time because so many people were having in distressed real estate, and
Yeah.
property prices had already dropped 30-40%, sometimes higher, and people were underwater in their properties, and it was a bad time, and tried some different ways to get the firm off the ground. I tried. I don't know if you remember, for a short while they had the trucks that would drive around that had the ads, like you put your kind of like a rotating billboard that would
Yeah,
rotate
yeah,
around,
like a
and it would
driving
drive around
billboard.
by the
Yeah.
beach and
Hmm.
to the mall. And I had my foreclosure defense picture, with my suit and tie, and only $395 per month, help help you defend against the big bad banks or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That didn't work out so well. I had a couple billboards on one near the Hard Rock, and over in Davie, and then one off Sample in 95. I got a couple leads from those. Those didn't work out well. There were some stinkers, and I spent some money and put myself out there in a few different ways, and it wasn't immediate. Success was definitely not immediate, and had to really dig down deep and just realize that failure was not an option.
Mm.
It's not. It really wasn't. I didn't want to go back to the corporate world. I had worked in the corporate world for 9 years for
Oh,
big companies and
as
worked for
an attorney?
LexisNexis. Yes, some roles as an attorney, and then some hybrid roles, and roles even a couple years as a marketing rep for a big company. LexisNexis is very big. A
Hmm.
couple other data companies as well. But what was tired of that corporate world, and really wanted to be the captain of my own ship. And even though the ship wasn't racing along in the very beginning, it took time, and then it caught on at a certain point to an extent. We found a cool list to mail to. I met a guy that was doing data farming, and we started mailing out to uh, foreclosure defense clients who had not even really gotten served yet, but the complaint had just been filed, the foreclosure complaint. So we would get that mail out within like 24 hours. I'd get the data and make sure our mailing person would get that out. So within 2 to 3 days, people would start calling because they hadn't even been served with a foreclosure complaint yet. So they didn't know. They opened the letter and they were surprised. And we had some pretty good success with that. I think over
Wow.
time that list got out, and more attorneys were mailing to it, to where a year or two later, there were stacks. People said, they would get stacks of these letters from attorneys. But at least for the first 6 to 12 months, we had some real good success with that, and some success ongoing, but it was just, it got a little harder and harder. And then over time, we reinvented ourselves within a few years because the market started to get better. We got into the title and closing business, and we also got into uh, landlord tenant eviction litigation. So we're doing 250, 300 plus evictions a month. That didn't start right away. That was, maybe 3 years into the foreclosure defense. We had clients that had investment properties, and their properties and their tenants that were in there were getting served with the foreclosure defense lawsuits. And the tenants once they got served with a foreclosure defense lawsuit, they realized the landlord, their owner, was not paying their mortgage. So they started thinking, well, why do I have to pay my owner? That's unfair. I'm paying them $2,000 a month, and then they're not paying the mortgage. So what is this?
Oh,
This is
yeah.
unfair. And so they would stop paying the owner, and then the owner would have to evict them, and they could. The tenants have to pay rent. Doesn't matter what the owner's doing. The owner may lose the property, but the tenants are obligated to pay the rent. So we started doing a handful of evictions here and there, and then we turned that into a sort of a machine that we have, and we're very well known for that now. We have a high volume of we have got a good amount of paralegals that handle that, and so we work with landlords and investors throughout the state of Florida on those, but other ancillary issues, and then that kind of cross pollinates. Those investors need other things too, like LLCs and operating agreements, or they have other types of litigation, or they want to sell a property and we can do the closing, or they need estate planning, or they own properties in an association and our association attorney can help. So it all kind of works together. And but back to your original question, which is, did you run into challenges? Absolutely. It wasn't just off for the races on day one.
Right.
It took time to build, and my partner was instrumental in that as well. And we've just the key is just never even accepting that there can be the possibility of defeat.
Right.
It just keep focusing on what's next. What do we have to try next? Keep trying different things. If this didn't work, let's try this. If that didn't work, let's try that. It's but have some kind of plan. At least you don't have to have it
Right.
planned out 3 years or 5 years from now, but at least have some kind of plan that let's try these three things, and if this one isn't working, let's put a little more effort into this one or that one, and kind of do like A/B testing, they call it.
Right.
So that
And what lessons or what skills or how what what did you learn from growing your practice that you've applied into growing your real estate empire? Is there
um
anything correlative, like something that because it sounds like you built your business before your real estate, or you started?
Built the business first for the most part, sort of. Yes, yeah, yeah. I found opportunities, or at least people that I can partner with or find deals or work with in certain capacities on the investing side through my real estate law firm.
Okay.
So many of my deals are on the MLS, but I have my own podcast, Real Deal Investing, and my partner on that podcast is a real estate broker, Larry Mastropieri. He's awesome, super cool guy, 35 years old, hyper successful, the top realtor in East Boca, kicking butt, like has 25, 30 listings right now, just in
Wow.
right now in process. The guy's an animal. But he also has about almost 100 units with he and his partner, and he's 35 years old. The two of them, have done very well in building up a great portfolio at such a young age. But I work with him on a number of deals too, where he'll find certain things that he comes across, and we work together. That's an example. But I work with
Mhm.
other brokers that are out there and people I've run across. Um, so yeah, I mean the two businesses do help each other, and because there's such sort of a small world, especially in the multifamily space here in, let's say, the greater Palm Beach County area with Broward too. There's not that many players that are in it, so you start to get to know them, and it's nice. I work with a lot of them, so maybe I've done a deal with someone, and then maybe they start sending me title work, title and closing deals, and vice versa. That I'm able to help them out by sending them on a lead because one of my clients needs something. But yeah, it that's another thing that I've read out there on books, and they say to invest in yourself and do invest in what you know and what you have a competitive advantage in. And I do have a competitive advantage in real estate. Doesn't mean that other people aren't hyper successful, done super well in real estate, and they aren't real estate attorneys. You don't have to be a real estate attorney to be here. You don't even have to be a realtor or a broker, but it doesn't hurt if you're in the business. Certainly doesn't hurt. There is an advantage to it. So yes.
And did you ever have a mentor as you were developing this in as an attorney and or as an investor? Was there someone that you leaned on or leaned into that was supportive?
Different stages and different times, always. There's always people, and maybe you don't even think about it, but I will turn to people for advice. I wouldn't say I have one mentor, especially as an attorney, no. But I look up to people and I will ask people for advice and questions and referrals. And hey, do you know a good inspector, or do you know
Hmm.
because I respect their opinion.
Right.
Our friend David Dweck, who runs the Boca Real Estate Investor Club, he's a mentor.
Hmm.
I look up to him, and he's had fantastic success, and he's introduced me to great people such as yourself, and other people that are in the club and that are at least ancillary to the club that have come to meetings, or he knows. And he's a great person with a great Rolodex, which is
Yeah.
dating me here,
Hmm.
but he's got a great database of contacts. So yeah, it's I truly believe that you should always have a great network and grow your network. And don't some people are just a little too hyper competitive. There's enough out there for everyone. Even if I was mega 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 successful, I couldn't even take up 0.1% of the Palm Beach County market. And
Right.
even if I had 500 million in real estate, it's still the tiniest little drop of just that county's market. So why am I going to be competitive with another attorney or another investor, or another multifamily investor? Sure, once in a while we run across each other's paths on a deal that we're both bidding for, but whatever. If it's not meant to be, there's other deals that come. There's too many deals for me to handle myself.
Right.
And same thing in my role as a lawyer. I've got several friends and colleagues that are lawyers too, and we share advice with each other, or they may do some part of the practice area, even if they're real estate attorneys. They may practice something that I don't know how to do or want to do, and I just feed them a lead, or vice versa. A lot of them
Hmm.
don't do evictions, and they send me all their eviction clients, and I appreciate it and I thank them. And every once in a while, I'll take them out to lunch or dinner. But it's good to build bridges and not burn them.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and that's one of the things that I is so important that we recognize is the community that we're in, the environment that we're immersing ourselves in. Because one of the things that I love about David, and obviously we attract, right? We attract the people, we find ourselves in those environments. David will have his competitors will be sponsors, right? You're there
Absolutely.
hanging out with Kevin Thatcher, right? He's title king, right? And
Yep.
yet there's everyone's spreading the
I love
love,
it.
everyone's supporting each
call,
other.
call me periodically with questions, and I'd be happy to call him if I had a question. He could answer, and he would, and I
Yeah.
love that. And we help each other out, and it's an environment that fosters community and positivity and sharing, and I love that. There's enough business out there for everyone. Yeah.
And I would say that mindset is paramount to success, that abundance mindset that, hell, like I joke with David sometimes because we're both, investing in Western North Carolina. And there have been times where I'll send him one and I'd be like, oh, look at this. And he'd be like, ah, you already bid on it. I already, it's already in contract or whatever. I'm like, dude, like how, right. But it's fun. Like I don't besmirch him. I'm not like you jerk or feel
Of course.
competitive. It's okay. To your point. Well, if
Fine.
it's not the right
Yeah.
deal, it's not the right
It'll be
deal.
the next one. Yeah,
Yep.
I'll get the next one. Yeah.
Funnily enough, there was one that happened, and then David was like, it ended up being a modular or manufactured home. It was not as good a deal as I thought it was. I found out after the fact, so I dodged a bullet.
You
Uh,
dodged the bullet. There you
yeah.
go. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. You can learn from some of David's or your friend, whether it's David or someone else, some of your friends' successes and their mistakes. If you have that open communication on people can help guide you. I'll leave you with this because I know we got to wrap up soon. You got a hard stop here soon, but they've done studies on people's success, and you know, they come at it different ways, but in essence, what they really learn is that it's so much based on the people you surround yourself with and who they are. Are they, um, you know, Also, successful people, are they doing things with their lives? Are they positive? Are they moving forward? Or are you around people that are, haters and people that are always ingrateful or having gratitude as at their core? That's not good. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but if nothing else, just connections. People who are doing things with their lives have a lot of connections.
Yep.
So
And they
why
love
not?
sharing it.
And they do, yeah. If you ask them and you're appreciative,
Well,
absolutely.
of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know for me, I meet somebody and sometimes, well, always some of my questions are, what are you excited about and what is an ideal referral resource for you? And
Hmm.
then, or I'll even ask, say, hey, would this be a good resource? And I'll just connect them right there. I'll just do a text and make it happen. And
Love
most of
it.
the people that I know, like most of the time, it's with someone who I know very well that will just take, oh, it's from Doug. Whatever you need,
Yeah.
like we'll take the call. Sometimes it'll be a new contact, like, hey, I don't know, like there may be
Try it.
something here. Like you
Try it.
guys,
Yeah.
I thought of you. If you guys want to have a
I've
call,
heard this plumber's good. I
yeah,
haven't used him yet, but try him out. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we got to spread the love. So if you were to look back now at your experience, would there be some advice, a note to yourself before maybe taking on a challenge, starting something, stopping something, some advice maybe you would give a younger Jeron to maybe push them along or avoid perhaps something? Any note to self?
Would a couple things on the investing side, I would say buy, 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 buy.
Monopoly.
Stop thinking about, what you could have bought a year ago and what went up, and stop thinking about, where time trying to time the market or where the market's going to be, a year from now. If the goal is to have a big portfolio, at towards the tail end of your life, you know, you only have so much life left. So the one commodity we have that's a diminishing commodity is time. And
Hmm.
so if you're waiting and you keep waiting, you say, well, I'm going to time the market, and I'm going to wait a year or two. Well, a year or two turns into 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and you're missing all that time for mortgage pay down, for your depreciation, for your appreciation, for your cash flow, all of that could be working for you. And you might have money sitting in a bank account or sitting making way less money, maybe somewhere, even if you have it in a something making you 6% a year, or even in the stock market, maybe making 7, 8% a year. Maybe that's okay, but is that really does it have the compounding effects that real estate
Right.
has? And the answer to me, at least in my conclusion, is no. So buy. The second thing would be for my professional self. Um, I would say really focus more on the activities that bring in revenue. And they say, what is it, 20% of the things you do make 80% of the money, and
Hmm.
vice versa. There's
Yeah.
20% of your clients that are 80% of your problems,
Hmm.
or 20%
Yeah.
of
The
your clients
Pareto
that are
principle. Yeah.
80%
It's
of your
everything.
revenue.
Yeah.
It's the Pareto principle. And so the key is always trying to fire yourself from unproductive activities and focusing on growth and bringing in revenue, whether that's from doing seminars or doing educational speaking or networking or pay-per-click advertising. We pay for things, and I've started to expand that. We're bringing in more leads now. I think there's a good return on investment. I probably should have done that more several years ago. We should have been focusing more on our SEO optimization and rolling out geo-targeted web pages throughout the state of Florida that we're doing now. But I could have done that 5 years ago. And there's any number of things I could have done years ago that I wasn't so focused on those activities now. But one thing I do like doing is always trying to grow mentally and spiritually. And from the mental part, I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I used to be a huge reader, voracious reader, not so much now, but I get a lot of my knowledge from experts that are out there on YouTube. I'll see them with 500,000 views or 1,000,000 views. Book summaries, great book summaries where they
Hmm.
summarize a great business book. I just finished one That was awesome. And, really rededicating myself to bringing in more leads, more sales, more clients. And, that's the goal because you can build everything around that. If you build uh, a customer intake team or an operations team, but you don't have enough sales or leads, that's not going to last very long. You can
Right.
have too many leads and too many sales because you can refer those on and you can maybe make a few bucks on those if you give them to some of your colleagues or friends or clients temporarily until you build up your operations team. But that's the number one, that's the key to success is
Well, and that's
bringing
how you
in the
create
leads.
raving fans because they know they came to you and they said, well, he couldn't take it at the time or whatever, but he turned me on to someone great. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the goodwill, right? That's the investment in yourself. And it's counterintuitive sometimes because there are mindsets of some that are so hoarding of their clients that they don't think about strategic partnerships or
Hmm.
really what's best for the client, right? A lot of times it's like, oh, it's that scarcity mindset. We try and figure out how
Yes.
to do it, and that hurts
Yeah.
everybody. um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We bring in so many leads now that we have, a couple attorneys that are of counsel. They technically have their own little firms on the side, but we have them handling our in-house clients. And so they're a part of the firm. I mean, they
yeah.
are. It just they're not paid an associate salary or a partner salary. And it's great. It's wonderful. They make a lot of money and we make less than 100%, than what if we were trying to handle it ourselves. But if I was trying to handle everything myself, I couldn't get to everything, and then I would be giving bad customer service, bad client service. So I'd much rather share the wealth and have someone who's really good that I vetted, who's reputable, handle these leads and handle these clients internally within our law firm umbrella. So that's kind of the what we've created and what we're really going to be targeting is expanding that relationship moving forward. So
Well, it's
yeah,
kind of like hiring a property manager, isn't it?
there you go. Look at that.
The
Look at
full
that.
circle came
Full
all the
circle,
way
baby.
around. All
You
right,
tied it up.
awesome.
Yeah.
So before we go, obviously, thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way for people to connect? I'm going to put it in the description, but also for those
Appreciate
auditory
that.
learners, what are the best ways to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you prefer to call the office, you can do so. Our phone number is two different numbers. We've got our 877 number, it's 877-871-8300, or our local number is 561-672-1161. And our website is www.kelley, which is Kelley, Grant, GRA, and as a Nancy T as in Tom, law.com. So kelleygrantlaw.com. Kelley with an EY. And you can go ahead and put that address in that description. Doug, I'd appreciate
Right
it.
on.
Thank you,
Awesome.
brother.
Well, thank you so much for giving your most valuable asset, your time, your wisdom. Um, Sorry to cut it short. We'll have you back to dive in deeper because I
Anytime.
know we could be unpacking maybe some deals. Maybe we'll have you come on when there's something changing in maybe the market or something's happening legally. I know you've come to spoken at Brick a number of times when there have been some changes or things to be aware of. So we'd love to have you back for things of that nature as well.
I'd love that. Would love to be here. So
Right on,
thank you.
brother. Well, I
Appreciate it, Doug.
appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you for who you are and who you aren't. And we will see you again soon.
See you soon, bro.
Right on.